What is your life's mission? Many of us know the answer to that question right away. For others of us, it's still work in progress. We're still trying to figure that out. You know, many people, especially those in the church community, tend to throw around that word mission an awful lot. Then there's the word missionary. And missionary conjures up these images of someone serving overseas in a dry and barren land of destitution. But a lot of these same people working overseas, and many more of our neighbors, consider it a major part of their mission to serve right here, right now, in Fayette County. These folks are ordinary people, just like you and me. They have flaws, they make mistakes, they all have their fair share of problems. But they've used their gifts to do wonderful things here in Fayette County, to start movements of hope, of peace, and of love. What sets them apart? Well, maybe it's their leadership ability. Maybe it's their work ethic. They'll tell you it's nothing more than grace from a higher power. Some of the people you're about to meet, you may have never seen before. They're quiet heroes, unsung heroes. Most of them don't think of themselves as heroes at all. But they're on the front lines, in the trenches, every day. Their passions in life range from healthcare, education, to social justice. They have so many ideas, and by their very nature, they're the people empowering others to come together and bring these ideas into reality. And yet most of these people were very slow to agree to speak with us on our program. See, they don't do what they do for recognition, for awards, for accolades. It's just that their cause, their ministry, their mission is so important to them that they want to get you involved. They know they're a part of something bigger than themselves. Meet Fayette County's servant leaders, and may their testimony inspire us to dream a little more, give a little more, be a little more. This is Fayette County. This is the mission field. These are the missionaries.
None of us are immune from losing a loved one, and for many, it's the most difficult thing we go through. The Stephen E. Kazmarski III Funeral Home helps you in your time of grief by providing compassionate, personalized care. Funeral Director Stephen E. Kazmarski and his attentive staff will handle the fine details of the funeral process, allowing you to focus on saying goodbye to your loved one and healing your grieving heart. Celebrate everything your family member meant to you by giving them a farewell that's worthy of a life well lived. The Stephen E. Kazmarski Funeral Home is a comforting, peaceful environment where families can gather and support each other, where you and your loved ones will be treated with the respect and dignity that you deserve. Stop in and discover the reason why so many Fayette County families entrust the Stephen E. Kazmarski III Funeral Home with the care of their loved one.
What do religious leaders do all day? If you think your pastor or minister preaches on Sunday and maybe spends the rest of the week just preparing to preach on Sunday, you might want to think again. Fayette County is so fortunate to have men and women in the ordained ministry and religious life who really go above and beyond the call of duty. They don't see their job as a Sunday-only obligation or even a 9-to-5 job, and they take their ministry far beyond the walls of their church or convent. Fayette County has a real treasure in the Sisters of St. Basil the Great, a community of women who've taken a vow to devote their lives to prayer and to improve Fayette County by spreading works of faith, hope, love, and charity. In the second half of our show today, you'll meet Sister Dorothy Baylog. Sister Dorothy doesn't let little things like age, or physical ailments get in her way of serving. She's a little sister with a big heart and a big sense of humor. But first, Pastor Brian Higbee. And when we scheduled an interview with Brian Higbee, we expected to meet a straight and narrow man with a buttoned-up collar. In walks a man with a Harley t-shirt and jeans. He immediately impressed us all with his sincerity, his compassion, and his energy. It's an energy that's allowed him to run a business while presiding over one of Fayette County's fastest-growing churches. If you've never found a pastor who is down to earth and is in touch with the needs of real people, your life is about to change.
I've known Reverend Pastor Brian for now about 8 years. I came into the community from another state, and it wasn't long after coming into the community that I met Pastor Brian. Right away, a connection started.
I remember my first impression, it was by chance. It was at his church, and it was by chance that we had met. And what had happened is I was actually attending a church here in Uniontown. We were running late with the family I was going with at the time, and they actually lived in Connellsville. They were making the trip down to Uniontown for this specific church, and they were running behind. They said, hey, we're running late. Why don't we go out to my grandmother's church this morning? So I said, okay, all right, let's do it. So I drove out to Connellsville, and that's where I met Pastor Brian. And so we went out to City Church, and I haven't missed much since.
What I appreciate about City Church and Pastor Brian is that visionary and seeing things and needs in the area that uniquely to Pastor Brian's view and to City Church.
When I met him at first, I wasn't quite sure what to make of him because he wasn't like the type of pastor that I was used to meeting. You know, the type who was just, extremely serious, and he was like a friend immediately from when I met him, and you could tell that he cared.
As you can see, I'm wearing a Harley t-shirt. I also drive a motorcycle. For so often we've been taught in the ministry that the way that we ascend the ministry ladder is to climb our ivory tower and stay there and put ourselves above everyone else.
You could tell that he was someone who was interested not just in me because I came to his church, but he was just interested in getting to know me.
I believe that my ministry should model Jesus. He walked with them. He talked with them. When he sat down with the woman at the well, he ate of what she had. You know what I'm saying? He allowed her to talk about what was on her heart.
Yes, as far as Pastor Brian's gift in getting, in finding the best in everybody, that's one of his best gifts. The Bible talks about spiritual discernment. You don't really have to be spiritual to understand discernment. It's being able to discern what's right and what's wrong. Be able to discern good and bad.
The people that influenced me the most were people that, at that moment, I wasn't aware of it. It's kind of interesting to note because sometimes we have people in our lives that are huge, future tense, but at the moment we don't recognize it. I had a pastor named Howard Smith at a little Methodist church right across from my house, a little white Methodist church, the classic in the country. And this man did something on the inside of me as he spoke, as his passion grew about the Lord. It really touched my life and caused a spark to happen. We began to pray together. He and I would go to the church like 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning and just pray together. Some other people that affected my life. A guy by the name of Keith Tucci really spoke into my life and my early part of ministry. Really helped me, kind of big brother kind of way. Another man, Pastor Bray Sibley, was a guy that he's from Louisiana. He actually was the first guy. He said this to me. He said, all you need is for someone to believe in you. And that stuck with me. I wouldn't even attempt to talk about my mom, who, and all the others, but my mom, I'll just share this. When I was 9 years old, I remember walking up the steps. Our kitchen was on the upstairs, and I was walking up the steps. And as I was walking up, I heard my mom, as she did often, she was at our dining room table, and she was praying. She was praying out loud, and I heard her say, God, please help Brian. Please help him to become the man of God that I know he's going to be. And I didn't go up because I didn't want to interrupt because I wanted to hear more. So I turned around, I sat down on the steps, and I just listened as she prayed. And it wasn't long after that I gave my life to the Lord.
I see the major needs in the area, especially in Connellsville and Uniontown, is for people to know what they're worth, to understand their self-worth. So many people don't understand how valuable they are, not just to the people around them, but also to God. And Pastor Brian has a way of developing that in people and bringing that fact out and bringing that beautiful truth out in people, that they understand that I'm not just here by chance or by accident, but that I'm valuable. I mean something. I'm valuable to my family. I'm valuable to my children. I'm valuable to everybody that I come in contact with. Pastor Brian has ways of not keying in on the things maybe that we don't have completely 100% right yet. But he has a way of keying in on what he perceives as our strengths and what really are our strengths. And in me personally, he's done that very thing. He's saw potential in me when I didn't see any potential in myself. And I think that is a huge thing that people need in our area, is just that sense of value. There's so much of a feeling of, I don't have purpose around here. You know, I can't find a job. There's no reason for me to stay in this area. I'm going to move out first chance I get. When that's not the case. You have the opportunity to make out of your life what you put into it. And Pastor Brian, again, has that ability of just of drawing on that's on the inside of each of us, that greatness that's locked up on the inside of each of us.
The worship at City Church is based on what we believe the people. It's the expression of the people at City Church in their worship to God. We don't try to take our worship and model people to our worship. We try to take our worship and make it an expression of the people that are there, which means that that because we have a relatively young church, our worship is contemporary, which means it is, for example, instrumentation. We have a guitar and a bass and a keyboard and singers and drums and and it's more like a band. But the drive of our worship, more than anything else, the heart of our worship is not about a performance or even a feel-good, slap your knee kind of, clap your hand, jump up and down kind of deal. But in each time we come together to worship, our focus is magnifying God, drawing close to Him, and helping people to experience God. Our building was a real gift. I mean, of course we had to pay for it, but the building that we're in was Swan's Furniture and Appliance. And a very good friend of mine, Bill Swan, we were in the Kiwanis Club together. And Bill comes up to me one day and he says, "Hey, I hear your church is growing and you're going to need a building." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm closing Swan's Furniture and Appliance. Why don't you think about our building?" And I said, "Oh, Bill, that's a big building. It's an old building. I don't know." And sure enough, I started thinking about it. He did close it, and he said, "Listen, it's for sale, and I want this much for it." And of course, that was a little more than what we could bite off being a young church. And so I approached him again later and said, "Hey, Bill," I said, "that I can't do it for that." And I think I cut the price down by like 45%. I says, "But I can do it for that." And he looked at me and he said, And I said, "Bill," and this is what Bill said to me. He said, "The Lord spoke to him and said that He's to sell me this church." I said, "Well, if God told you that, then He also can tell you the price you're to sell it to me for." And so I said, "You're going to have to do that, Bill." He says, "Well, let me talk to my wife." And you know what? He did. He came back and he sold it to us for that. And really, it was below the street value of the building, far below it. And it was what we could afford, and it was just an amazing thing. So we took this facility, and we worked like crazy. We didn't hire contractors. We did all the work ourselves, really. And we moved in. Well, then we outgrew that space, and so we had to expand it. So we knocked down a wall, and then we knocked down another wall. Well, we knocked down all the walls we can now, and so we've taken up all the space we can, and we're using it to its best capacity. So we're looking at building at some point.
The importance of men in ministry and serving in ministry is huge. It's just the same as the importance of a father being with his child. The absence of a father or the absence of a loving father can really cause a child to have some struggles.
He was able to take a small group of people and now make it into one of the thriving community of faith in our city. I don't know that there's any one factor in that. I mean, God has seasons and God has times, but Pastor Brian, as I've mentioned, is someone who can see a problem, pinpoint a problem, and instead of dwelling on the problem, find a solution.
In the Bible, Jesus talks about the greatest among you is the greatest servant, and we believe that. We believe the words of Jesus, and we do everything we can to not only serve Connellsville, but serve everywhere we go to help people, and not just serve on City Church's terms, or Pastor Brian just doesn't serve on Pastor Brian's terms or when it's convenient. It becomes inconvenient at times to drop what you're doing to help a lady you've never met move. That's extremely inconvenient, but it speaks of the love that Pastor Brian has received from God, and also the love that he teaches those of us who go at City Church.
None of us are immune from losing a loved one, and for many, it's the most difficult thing we go through. The Stephen E. Kazmarsky III Funeral Home helps you in your time of grief by providing compassionate, personalized care. Funeral Director Stephen E. Kazmarsky and his attentive staff will handle the fine details of the funeral process, allowing you to focus on saying goodbye to your loved one and healing your grieving heart. Celebrate everything your family member meant to you by giving them a farewell that's worthy of a life well lived. The Stephen E. Kazmarsky Funeral Home is a comforting, peaceful environment where families can gather and support each other, where you and your loved ones will be treated with the respect and dignity that you deserve. Stop in and discover the reason why so many Fayette County families entrust the Stephen E. Kazmarsky III Funeral Home with the care of their loved one.
It's amazing that a body as tiny as Sister Dorothy's could contain a heart so big. As a member of the Sisters of St. Basil the Great, Sister Dorothy has devoted her life to prayer. But for Sister Dorothy Baylog, prayer has produced action, and lots of it. Sister Dorothy feels a special calling to serve those people who are in their very last days and moments of life, and to bring healing to their loved ones. The team at Albert Gallatin Emeritus Hospice consider Sister Dorothy an irreplaceable, invaluable volunteer. And anyone who's ever spent even a few minutes with Sister Dorothy Baylog considers her a friend.
Sister Dorothy has been such an inspiration to me. My faith in God is very strong, and I know that I'm a nurse today because of the Lord. But working side by side with her, seeing how much that she puts what she's feeling behind her, and to reach out and touch those people, to make that difference. Even though there's times that I've watched her and she wasn't feeling well, she would say, "Patty, I need to go see the people."
Sister was teaching in Trenton, New Jersey, and I lived nearby, and we actually didn't meet there, but we came to the same event in 1963 and met each other here and realized that we lived near each other and followed up thereafter. So she became my friend just before I became a Sister of St. Basil. I was taught by these sisters, though, and familiar with them. So she was a very early blessing in my religious vocation and has remained a very close friend and blessing to me ever since.
I worked at Mount Macreen at one time, and I've known her from then, and she's been with Albert Gallatin Emeritus same time as me, and I put in the last 10 years with them. So we work side by side.
I had no knowledge of the Sisters of St. Basil whatsoever until I came to the first pilgrimage. When I came to the pilgrimage, then I became familiar with the Sisters of St. Basil with their ministry. I really had this desire in my heart from the time I was in high school. And I was the last of 7 siblings. And my parents were still living, my mother and my father. And then I was left at home. The others went out to work, and I was left at home to care for them. So I had that desire in my heart all the way through high school. My ministry as a sister of St. Basil is the prayer life. We're involved in prayer, and then I was administrator of our nursing home for 17 years. And after that, I was free to go on to whatever else I wanted to choose. And so that's when I chose to go with Albert Gallatin Home Care and Hospice. And the ministry there is to go out and visit people, try to bring, especially hospice people, try to bring, help them in their entrance to the new life, help them to cope with their illnesses and their aging process.
The Lord's message is a message of love. Love in all conditions. Love without conditions. The worldly spirit might say people who are in this state are no longer useful. And let's end the misery, or let's push them aside. And the Christian message is not that. We are of God and going on the way to God. So always the person has this divine dignity, so to speak, and she always treats people that she ministers to in that way. That here we have a taste only of the kingdom, but the best is yet to come.
And when I would go to pick her up and to take her, because she's not driving right now, she would say to me, "You see, I'm no good in this room. I need to be out there with those people to make a difference." So when I would go with her, you know, I would look at the little Alzheimer's patient over there that she would go over and talk to them, and before you know it, they're talking, they're laughing, they're trying to communicate with her, and just such an inspiration. She's taught me so many things. One of the things, a lot of things that she tells me I share with other people.
Because when I visit with those people, and I take to them, but I also receive so much more in return. And I was just relating to Patty a story about one patient that I had. She was 103 years old, and she loved iced tea. And I would bring her iced tea, but I would put a sign on the outside that said moonshine. And she just loved that. Every time I brought her in a bottle of iced tea with moonshine on it, she would just light up. You know, it was just so joyful to her. And she kept, at 103, she kept asking me, "Sister, when is God going to call me? When am I going to go home to my heavenly place?" I said, you're getting a distillery in your mansion. And so God doesn't have that distillery in your mansion yet, so you've got to wait until he gets it put in there. So that was she was a joy to me. And so were so many others. They were joyful. To hear their stories, to share their stories. They had rough lives, but I try to make them feel that they are sharing in the sufferings of Jesus. They're being called in a special way to share the sufferings of Jesus. And it's not all downhill, I'm doing this for the Lord. And it's just a joy for me to help them cross from this life into the next life, and to remove any fears that they might have.
I've seen her with the sick and the dying, and her presence to them is so intense. Somehow isn't quite the word, but it's very touching. It's very touching to see, and it reminds me again and again to always see the deeper picture, not just the bigger picture, but the deeper reality of this is a person in Christ. This is a person, no matter what we see of the physical condition of this person, he or she is again, in that divine dignity, and she sparks that. She sparks that, and she sparks it in me with her own presence, her own hopefulness.
I changed my prayers. We're non-denominational, so I know who is Catholic, who is not Catholic, who is Jewish, and so I arranged their prayers accordingly. Yes, for the Catholic we say the Catholic prayers. For the Jewish we say the Jewish prayers. Protestant prayers. And we also have Christian hymns that I play for them. Many of them belonged to their church choirs when they were younger, and so they recall these hymns, and they're able to sing right along. And they love that. They love to sing along with their Christian hymns. To know that I'm helping them accept their sufferings, accept their pain, to realize that even in this they are being chosen, selected by the good Lord to help him carry that cross of suffering. And it makes them feel good. And I get my joy out of that. And of course, my own strength comes before I go to visit anybody. I always pray that I have the right things to say and the right things to do. And just go from there.
I hear it all the time around town, yes. Positive and grateful remarks about, what she has brought to the patients as well as to the families, that they are so grateful for years and years later, and they always remember her.
She has truly been an inspiration to all of us at the office, wherever she meets, wherever she goes. She enlightens people and brings peace to them, which only comes from God, but He works through her. And you can see that. Many people, when I'm out there that I run into, they will tell me, you mentioned Sister Dorothy's name, and there's like, oh, how she has touched us. We don't know what we would have done without her, because she has helped us so much whenever my mother or my father, my child has died. I mean, Sister Dorothy has just been an enlightenment to everyone. Such a blessing to all of us. Yeah, she's my inspiration.
Well, I wish you could see her in operation at the pilgrimage. We have this big Labor Day weekend pilgrimage, and I hope that the local people participate, because many things there can inspire you. But Sister Dorothy, despite her health challenges, commits herself to being there, and she has helpers to do the actual work, but she wants to be there for the presence to other people. And people look forward to coming to her station at the pilgrimage and sharing their needs for prayer, being inspired and lifted up again by having some time to share with her. And it's just a little reflection of all the beautiful things, inspiring and blessed things that happen at that pilgrimage. But she's certainly one of the divine sparks there.
We all make a difference. I don't care how old you are. There's always something you can do to either to help others, to be there for others. And there's never a thing such as giving up.
This is Fayette County. This is the mission field. These are the missionaries.